Welcome back. I am John P. In this video, we are going to be providing some ways that you can help to determine whether or not you may have a replica, fake, or counterfeit watch on your hands. Well, really your wrist, but you get the idea. In this video, we're going to be going through some things that are pretty quick and don't require a lot of effort to at least quickly rule out the watches that are more than simple replicas, but not quite the ultra replicas, right? There are some super reps, as they call them, which truly need to be taken apart by a professional watchmaker that has the experience and is able to determine the certain mechanics and the parts inside the watch that could be counterfeit. Because today, the manufacturers that are making some of these replicas or counterfeit watches are producing them with the same types of machinery that some of the manufacturers are also actually using to produce the watches in the first place. So they do make some replicas out there that are really close, but this video should at least help you in the year 2023 with some interesting new ways that you can help. On the wrist today, I have actually back on my wrist the Rolex OP39 Red Grape, just really putting it on the wrist here to kind of lubricate the gears. I just haven't worn it in so long. I did a video on that in the past. So let's jump into it. The first thing I want to mention is that it's generally the first knee-jerk reaction for someone that wants to know whether or not their watch is authentic is taking it to a boutique. Now, I'll say that largely the people working at the boutiques, from what I've seen and hearing other collectors and their experience, it's very hit or miss when it comes to them not only being willing to help, but also having the resources to do so. Many boutiques are hiring salespeople that have very friendly, approachable, personable skill sets, and not necessarily the skill sets that are required to be able to determine if a watch is not what it's presenting to be. And so some boutiques, maybe they do have the staff, or maybe even are run by an AD, or they have a watchmaker on staff, but boutiques are very hit and miss. So I would say certainly that should not be the first option because it's very hit or miss, and you may actually get the wrong answer. Believe it or not, I've seen that before as well. So I wouldn't put as much weight on that option. But that takes us next to kind of the point before we jump into some true things that you can do is I would advise to always start with the assumption that, hey, this watch could be not authentic, right? Especially when we're talking about Rolex and Audemars Piguet. They have these super replicas that exist where they really do strive to copy everything one-to-one, and I don't think they're entirely successful, but they pass a lot of checks. So for Rolex and AP, there's a lot of potential for funny business with these two hot, desirable brands. People want them in the real world, but they also want them in the replica world as well. So especially if these watches do not have the box and the papers and they're pretty recent models, last 5-6 years, I would always suggest kind of erring on that side of caution and starting the steps from there. But that takes us into the first thing that you can do, which is to Google the serial number of the watch. These serial numbers of replica watches oftentimes are the same exact serial number. So if you take the serial number on the watch and you pop that into your favorite search engine, there's a good chance that you will find all the replica sites that do have that watch listed, or maybe some forum posts, things like that. There appears to be certain forums that work on this type of a thing. So if you take a replica that has a serial number, pop it into a search engine, there's a good chance you'll find the results, and 100% chance that that watch is not an authentic watch. The next thing you can do is, and this one I think is great, and it's because the internet has come so far and photography has really truly been made available to everyone. This is to compare the watch that you have in your hand that you're questioning with images from highly reputable dealers that are selling or sold the watches online. Especially with Del Rey Watch, we have a sold section where most of the watches that we have sold ever are in the sold section. You can see the thousands of watches that we've sold, different models and references, and you can use the search feature. But the same goes for many other dealers and sellers and companies that catalog the watches. Not only the brands, but the resellers that also have teams and staffs that do this all day, every day. So compare the pictures. And if something seems a little bit off, maybe it's not quite aligned, maybe the proportions are not there. Today, that is a really great sign that something is up. Either the watch has been modified or maybe even the watch is not authentic. And I would say 10, 15 years ago, it was very common for certain watch models and references to have subtle differences, right? Frank Mueller was very guilty of this when they were popular, early 2000s. Other brands, even Omega, had very subtle differences in some of the dials and things that today, based on reference numbers, these brands just don't really have. So if something seems a little bit off, the watch is very old, maybe it still could be authentic. But if something is off and it doesn't match any pictures online that you see, there's a very high chance that something is wrong with the watch. Now, the next thing that you can do is check the box, the papers, all the trinkets and accessories that you get. If something comes extra with the watch, that might not be a big deal. Certain places in the world, certain boutiques, ADs, sometimes will throw extra things in. I know at Del Rey Watch, if we have some extra trinkets and things that came with the watch, we'll put it in there because, hey, that's what it came with the original owner that sent the watch in. So we'll oftentimes add something a little bit extra that maybe didn't come shipped with the watch, but it's just a nice thing and someone should probably use it. There's different, little models and things that came with certain watches over the years. Now, when it comes to looking through the paperwork, looking through the warranty card and all that, I have seen instances where there is actually typos, misspellings in the not the warranty information, but the instruction booklets and all the literature, all the little different manuals and things that they give you inside there. Well, the counterfeiters and the replica creators, they are oftentimes in parts of the world where maybe it's not their first language of English, which the warranty and the documentation is primarily going to be in, especially if in their US market. Different parts of the world, there's going to be some differences here, so this may not apply to you entirely, but there is an increased ability for there to be misspellings, and I have personally seen this. Even before Del Rey Watch, when I was trading watches on the forums, I would go through this, and one time I saw an issue with a UN, a Ulysse Nardin watch, and there was a completely, entirely wrong grammatical error in a sentence in this documentation. So I sent it back to the seller. I knew right away, hey, I didn't even have to go through the rest of the watch because it's just a watch that had such a serious issue with the paperwork like that. In the spelling, it wasn't just a typo, it was the entire structure of the sentence was so wrong, it made no sense in the English language. So look out for this. Surprisingly, this does still occur today. Now, another thing that you can do, and I think this has become increasingly necessary, is the watch needs to be looked at under some type of magnification. Now, this could be a magnifying glass, this could be a loupe, a specialist system, but you don't even have to get that crazy with that. Even if you have one of the latest iPhones, they have some macro sensing technology in the camera, which should allow you, and I do this myself just while taking pictures, wristies and things like that. You can zoom in fairly close to the item, the watch that you're taking pictures of, and you can take the picture, zoom in, and see if there's any kind of dust or debris, or even some hairs, or maybe some scratches in the watch. And if this is a watch that has come out in the last few years, or maybe this is a watch that's being marketed and sold to you as being new or unworn, then this is something to look out for, because while this does happen, it's not that common. Now, it doesn't mean that if there's a hair inside the watch, that certainly the watch is going to be inauthentic, or it's not going to be a real watch, because someone could have opened it up. There could be an issue coming from a factory. You never know. These are mechanical things. They are not 100% error-proof here. Errors do happen. Humans are playing a major role in assembling the watch, so things are going to happen. Maybe the watch had an aftermarket service, repair, service ticket. Who knows what could have happened? But when you start adding a lot of these things together, you can either make a compelling case for or against whether or not the watch is authentic. And I really do have to caution and say once again that today they make the replicas out there so great where they're not even just copying Rolex watches. They will copy watches like a Glashütte Original in certain movements that you would only see in the brand. But with the manufacturers and the way that machining has really come such a long way and anyone can access it, it's not just this ultra high barrier to entry. They have so many really close replicas, and that's why you need to have the watch looked at by a watchmaker, whether it's a watchmaker from a reputable seller that you know and trust and has a really great track record, or maybe you have a personal relationship with a watchmaker in your city or even remotely that you can send watches and things of that nature to and have them help you out in that way. But the only true and tested way would be to have a watchmaker, or if you send a watch to the manufacturer or their authorized service center, they're not going to repair a watch that is counterfeit or a replica, right? That wouldn't make any sense. So they are basically going to be running an authenticity check in a way anyway, and they typically give you an estimate for a repair bill or a service bill. Once they receive the watch, they know what they're working with. So that's kind of another trick or tip that you could use is if you have a watch you're questioning, send it to the brand, send it to the authorized service center, not the boutique, the brand service center, get a service quote. And then from there, hey, if they're going to service it, you know it's authentic. And oftentimes they give you service papers as well. So it should you ever sell the watch, it should lend to increased likelihood for that buyer to believe that the watch is authentic as well. But what do you guys think about this? Are there any other things that you've learned or known? Or maybe you have a story of a watch that you were thinking of buying and something did not seem right? I would love to see it and hear it in the comments below. Guys, please do not forget to check out delraywatch.com where we buy, sell, trade watches. And you can find me on Instagram, The Real John P. Thanks, guys. You've been chatting with John P.